am so pleased now to kick off our Allies in Action Award presentation. The AFSP Allies in Action Award celebrates a federal legislator or legislative staff's outstanding leadership and their steadfast commitment to advancing policies that prevent suicide and promote mental health. The Allies in Action Award is presented in recognition of those who have championed meaningful change, elevated suicide prevention as a national priority, and demonstrated unwavering support for the well-being of our communities. So please join me now in celebrating this year's Allies in Action Award. So I am just so delighted to present the Honorable Jack Reed, U.S. Senator from Rhode Island, this recognition for his advocacy for federal funding for suicide prevention programs, whether it's the CDC's Comprehensive Suicide Prevention Program, SAMHSA's Garrett Lee Smith Memorial Act programs, whether it's 988, yes, and the National Strategy for Suicide Prevention, and his steadfast leadership on policies to prevent suicide and improve mental health. He is a member of the bipartisan Senate Mental Health Caucus. He's the co-author of 988. Yes. Woo! And he introduced, along with Senator Kaine, Senator Young, and Senator Young, the Dr. Lorna Breen Health Care Provider Protection Act, one of our legislative acts that we took to Capitol Hill yesterday. He is a steadfast champion. My goodness, if there's anything in Congress that has to do with suicide prevention, you know it was touched by Senator Reed. Yes, and actually in 2023, AFSP and NAMI had the distinct pleasure of awarding him the 988 Crisis Response Champion. So with that, I am pleased to honor and award Senator Jack Reed our Allies in Action Award for 2025.
Well, thank you very much first. This is and thank you for all the great work you do each and every day across the country. It's critical. I want to thank Laurel for that very, very kind introduction and for this award. And thank you all for being here and for sharing your stories about what you encounter each and every day throughout this country. You've seen representatives and senators this week. You've talked to them. And let me tell you, you are the most forceful advocates for this important cause because you, one, have the experience, and two, people in my line of work understand that if they see you in the grocery store, they might see you in the voting line too. There's a correlation here, ladies and gentlemen, so keep up the good work. I'm particularly proud to recognize Melissa Ames from Pawtucket, Rhode Island, and Kim Lees from Lincoln, Rhode Island. I had a chance to sit down with them yesterday. It was an insightful and fascinating discussion, and I thank them. And I want to also recognize the colleagues that are also receiving awards today. Senator Jerry Moran, Representative Mike Lawler, and Representative Mike Levin. Jerry and I worked very closely on a bipartisan basis. He's a very distinguished gentleman, and I'm proud to call him a colleague and friend. Now, again, I applaud all of you for having the strength and resolve to take a heartbreaking experience and turn it around to try to help others and also to educate all of us in Congress about what we must do. And that inspires us to do our part, to fund adequate suicide prevention, and to put forth new ideas to turn the tide on this epidemic. And it works. Over the last several years, we've passed landmark legislation, making the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline an easy-to-remember three-digit number, 988. And yeah, when I first discovered the hotline number was 1, area code, blah, 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 I said, I can't even remember it, and I'm in pretty good shape at the moment. I'm not, I'm not stressed, so we got to do something better, and we did. And we've increased funding for the Lifeline to over $500 million the last couple of years to meet the demand. And I must say, given our experience in Rhode Island particularly, this is an extraordinarily successful and cost-effective way to deal with people who are in deep, deep psychological stress. And it's something that we will continue, at least I hope we'll continue. We're working hard to do that. We also want to provide more resources. I had the privilege of working on the Garrett Lee Smith Youth Suicide Prevention Program, along with my colleague whose son lost his life in college, because we understood there was not only an opportunity, a necessity to provide help and experience at the college level focused on college students, because it is a stressful time in many people's lives. And we've been working to ensure that we deal with other aspects of youth suicide. And as our hostess has indicated, Senator Moran and I are working on the Suicide Prevention Act, which would improve data collections, strengthen suicide prevention screening and training in healthcare centers. And we know that many of the people who attempt suicide have tried to access health care before their incident. And frankly, we have not yet developed the skills in our emergency room workers, the doctors and nurses, to identify people with potential suicidal ideations and treat them right there. This resource, these monies will go and do that. Now, if we work in the healthcare system to identify people before they become in a critical moment, then we can save many, many more lives. And I know Jerry Moran and I are both committed to getting this done. Now, I would be remiss if I did not mention some of the challenges we're facing this year. We have provided extended coverage for people under the Affordable Care Act, the Mental Health Parity Act. The safety net coverage through Medicaid underpins all of this. And we must continue to ensure that these funds are available so that when people are in crisis, they can get access to help. We have to do that. And this week, we're coming to the deadline. And this is the week we start voting on reconciliation. And the question is very simple. Will we protect the neediest people in America, or will we enrich the greediest people in America? It's that simple. And I'm voting no, and I hope my colleagues all across the aisles either vote no or decide not even to bring this up. There's much more productive things we can do with our time. And as you all know, the best way to prevent suicide is to have access to mental health care. And the bill that we're contemplating today would do exactly the opposite. It would shrink opportunities for people to get access to health care, to have an intervention early before it's too late. And then again, we learned something that to me is more than distressing, it's frankly dreadful. The Trump administration is cutting funding for the LGBTQ plus specialized services within 988. That is just dumb. He signed the legislation into law in 2010 without reservation, but now, because of their political stand, not their policy stand, they're opposing this. This is pretty simple to me. Someone in distress, you help them. You don't check out their, their race, their height. I'd be in real trouble. You just help them. And that's what 988 has been doing so well. And there's no need to do this at all. Now, roughly 500,000 people last year through the Trevor Project took advantage of the 988 access to that community. So we're telling 500,000 Americans we don't value your lives. Well, we do, and we have to restore. In fact, there are statistics that suggest that in that community, it may be 4 times more likely to contemplate suicide at some time. So this is not about ideology. Again, it's just simple saving people's lives, and that's what I think this country at its best should be about. Well, let me conclude by thanking you for what you do. You are the warriors for this great effort. You're the ones who make the real difference. We can pass laws, but without your inspiration, without your guidance, without your support, those laws would probably never happen. You've got to keep us informed of what's going on so we can adapt, innovate, and do more for you. And thank you again very, very much. Keep up the good work. Thank you.
Yes, and just as Senator Reed said, our Allies in Action Awards also extend to 3 other wonderful members of Congress, and their Allies in Action Awards, we were able to present them on yesterday when we were on the Hill. So we have the Honorable Jerry Moran, who is also co-authoring the Suicide Prevention Act, as Senator Reed mentioned, of Kansas. And we presenting this award to Senator Moran yesterday in his strong recognition for his support of the 988 Suicide and Crisis Lifeline Program, his strong support for veterans as chair of the Veterans Affairs Committee, and his leadership on policies to prevent suicide and improve mental health. And I know some of our Kansas volunteers were there to give the award. I'm not too sure if we have any pictures in real time that we could show, but I did hear it was just a very nice award, extending of an award. The other Allies in Action Award, as I suggested, was given to the Honorable Mike Lawler of New York. And this award was presented to him in recognition of his work to address suicide prevention among veterans, service members, and youth, including for specialized services for LGBTQ youth through the 988 Suicide and Crisis Lifeline. Congressman Lawler was one of the members of Congress, a Republican member of Congress, that wrote a letter even before we had the official notice that the 988 LGBTQ plus youth specialized service line will be officially shut down July 17th. He wrote a letter was speaking out on strong concerns of that. And then since that letter came out, has been in social media just against that. So as I said, Bob Gevy, our CEO, had the pleasure of giving the award to him yesterday, and he signed on to the two bills readily. And so with that, we applaud Congressman Mike Lawler. And our fourth Allies in Action Award for Congressional members of Congress was bestowed yesterday as well to Congressman Mike Levin of California. And we presented this award to him on his leadership, in recognition of his leadership on veteran suicide prevention and secure firearm storage through legislation such as the CVSO Act. As you remember, this is about helping families and veterans with getting service-connected benefits, and the Prevent Family Fire Act. And I know our California volunteers were there. I heard wonderful things about that meeting. So thank you for being able to present that award, the Allies in Action Award, to the Honorable Mike Levin yesterday. So again, our 2025 Allies in Action Award, the Honorable Jack Reed, the Honorable Jerry Moran, the Honorable Mike Lawler, and the Honorable Mike Levin. And now we have 4 Allies in Action Award recipients who are congressional staff. Now, as we all know, congressional staff are very important members that we meet with, we dialogue with, and do a lot of work. And our job is really to make their job easier, too, from our policy and advocacy staff that are there as resources, as well as everyone here that are resources to congressional staff, that free flowing of information, the assistance here and giving the assistance and offering, such as Talk Save Lives. We are so pleased to award the Laura Titus, who is a health policy advisor for the office of U.S. Senator Jerry Moran, with our Allies in Action Award. Unfortunately, she is not able to join us today, so I am hopeful, and I know that our Kansas folks and others will be reaching out. You may have even, yesterday I've had the opportunity to meet with her to celebrate her. The award is in recognition of her longstanding support for programs and legislation that increase access to mental health services and prevent suicide. Laura has played an instrumental role advancing the Suicide Prevention Act, as Senator Reed discussed, and other suicide prevention legislation. And so, Laura Titus, we celebrate you as the Allies in Action Award. And next, Jill Boland, Senior Policy Advisor for the Office of U.S. Senator Jack Reed. She is here, and I'm really excited. Jill I don't know how long Jill has actually been on the Hill, but she is one of those staffers that is just a trusted advisor, a trusted ally, is super smart. I worked with her when I was in another organization, and now, and even probably before that organization. Just like I said with Senator Jack Reed, if there's anything with mental health or suicide prevention, Jill's right there, either writing it, revising it, advising it, and she's worked so closely with the AFSP policy and advocacy team, and I'm just so delighted that we are bestowing this Allies in Action Award to her. It is in recognition for her leadership as Senator Reed's senior policy advisor. Jill has worked in support of legislation such as the Suicide Prevention Act and 988 Implementation Act, and to advance federal funding for suicide prevention priorities. That's just a nugget of just so much that she's done on behalf of the cause. So with that, I am pleased to award Jill Boland the Allies in Action Award for 2025.
Thank you, Laurel, for your very kind words and for this award. Really, I just want to thank all of you for being here in DC, advocating on behalf of your family, friends, and neighbors on this very important issue. Your willingness to turn the hardest days and moments of your lives into a mission to improve other people's lives is really, really commendable. It's a really brave and generous thing that you are doing, telling your stories to relative strangers. So thank you for doing that. Having worked on the Hill for many years, as Laurel noted, I've been with Senator Reed for almost 12 years now and on the Hill since 2008. So that makes me a senior citizen around here. We get a lot of data and numbers thrown at us, but it's the stories and experiences that really drive home the importance of the programs and the efforts that you're advocating for. Like Laurel mentioned, I've worked really closely with her and with Emily and with so many others at AFSP, and we work and we take your ideas for how we can help the most people and do the most good. And as we're, working on those bills, in the back of our minds, what we're also thinking is, would this have made a difference for Melissa from Pawtucket and her friend Johnny? Would this have been the thing that changed things for Kim from Lincoln? And so your words truly make a difference and stick with us as we go about our work for years to come. I also want to acknowledge the other staff awardees, Laura, Jenny, and Tyler. Support for suicide prevention issues continues to be a bipartisan issue, and I'm so happy to be able to keep working with colleagues on both sides of the aisle on these shared priorities, especially Laura and Senator Moran's office, who I've had the pleasure of working with on the Suicide Prevention Act, among other things, and also had the privilege of working with her predecessors before her on many of these issues. So thank you again, and please, please keep up what you're doing, and we will keep doing our best to do what you tell us to do. Thank you.
And next, really excited that AFSP is recognizing Jenny Tang, who's Staff Director for the House Veterans Affairs Committee Majority Committee. We present Jenny with this award in recognition of her leadership in support of suicide prevention and mental health. Jenny was instrumental in advancing core provisions related to suicide prevention in the Senator Elizabeth Dole 21st Century Veterans Healthcare Improvement Act, and worked our staff, notably Bill White, on issues, veterans issues, that were able to get into this act, not as a freestanding bill, but within this act. It takes a lot of work. Veterans issues are a priority for AFSP, as you know, for suicide prevention, and Jenny Tang as staff director to this powerful committee in the House, the Veterans Committee, was an instrumental force as a congressional staffer representing her member on that committee. And we are just so pleased to be able to bestow this award, the Allies in Action Award for 2025, to Jenny Tang.
Hi, y'all. Thanks so much for this honor. I'm going to keep this brief. I'm pretty shy in the spotlight. Thank you all for all of your work to improve access to mental health care. It was a huge bipartisan and bicameral effort to pass the Elizabeth Dole Act, and I was privileged to support Chairman Mike Boss, the chairman of the House Committee of Veterans Affairs, in that effort. The Dole Act included critical provisions, as you know, including those that improved access to mental health care for veterans and their caregivers who put their lives on hold to care for our most injured heroes. But the work continues to ensure that veteran suicide ends. The House Veterans Affairs Committee, under Chairman Boss' leadership, recently put many bills through legislative hearings that would improve access to mental health care further for veterans and their caregivers and their survivors. And I thank you for your work to advocate and for your to educate us and for your advocacy for policies that would prevent suicide, not just for veterans, but for all human beings. Thank you again for this honor.
Thank you so much, Jenny. And certainly, last but definitely not least, AFSP is so proud to recognize Tyler Allard, Deputy Legislative Director for the Office of U.S. Representative Seth Moulton of Massachusetts. We present Tyler Allard this award in recognition of his leadership in supporting the 988 Suicide and Crisis Lifeline, including LGBTQ+ youth specialized services, firearm suicide prevention, and suicide prevention among veterans and service members. One thing about Tyler, he just brings me joy. Every time I see Tyler, he's at all the events. You know, he's one of those staffers that readily contacts the policy and office team, is like, you know, sharing information, getting information, is just such a valuable congressional staffer, and personally just brings me joy every time I see him at an event. I just love him. I'm excited that we're honoring him, and so I am pleased to award Tyler Allard with the 2025 Allies in Action Award. Please join me in congratulating him. And as you know, U.S. Representative Seth Moulton is also the architect of the 988 bill. So let's give it up for Tyler.
Well, thank you, Laurel, and thank you, everyone. And this is extremely flattering, and I am very mindful that this is really an award for my boss, Congressman Moulton, and the work that he leads and champions on mental health and suicide prevention. As Laurel just said, and hopefully as you all know, Congressman Moulton was the architect of establishing the 988 line, and we are always proud to continue to champion it and do everything we can to make sure it's funded securely, the line as a whole, the Veterans Crisis Line, and especially at this particular moment, the LGBTQ plus specialized line. I know everyone here knows it by now. It is mind-boggling that just the other day, the administration carried through on its plan and proposal to terminate the LGBTQ plus line, and so we are certainly going to be doing everything we can in our office to fight like hell to oppose that. As I'm sure many of you know, including the folks from Massachusetts, Nancy and Lindsay, Congressman Moulton is not shy about raising his voice on issues that matter. When the initial proposal to cut the line came through a couple months ago or a couple weeks ago, we led over 100 House Democrats in a letter to RFK Jr. pushing back on that. Now that they've actually carried through on their plan to terminate it in the next month, just yesterday, us, and we were thrilled to be joined by Congressman Lawler, as well as Congressman Krishnamurthy. We sent another letter to RFK Jr. pushing back on this, and we are certainly, just later today, we're going to be working with more Democratic offices on how we can best strategize and brainstorm to keep pushing back up against this. And what's truly mind-boggling about this effort to cut the LGBTQ plus line, as you all know better than anyone, is this doesn't follow best practices in suicide prevention. This doesn't follow the science. It can be nothing more than a purely ideologically spite-driven effort to, be mean to kids who are in crisis and are more vulnerable and feeling more scared and alone than many people in our society. And as you all know, if you're touched by mental distress, if you have a loved one in crisis, you don't care what political party they are. You don't care what their particular, identity might be or who they love. You just want them to get help. And the fact that we might be cutting services that is saving lives and helping people in the throes of crisis is just truly, truly mind-boggling. So thank you for this. This is, extremely flattering, and we will be continuing to do everything we can to help save lives and do what we can to help, keep losing more lives of more loved ones. So thank you very much for this, and thank you for all the work you all are doing. Thank you.
Again, let's give it up for Tyler, Jill, Jenny, and Laura, our Allies in Action Congressional Award recipients for 2025. And I just want to thank everyone that's helped inform the selection, the choices. As you know, there's a lot of Hill staff out there. And I want to recognize Emily Feltrin and Zach Cada and Bill White, and the entire policy and advocacy team for working with our public policy council as well in identifying these 4 congressional staffers and 4 members of Congress.